Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joseph Ladelfa from the Exertion Games Lab at RMIT, and today we'll be looking at understanding the design of human-drone interactions for bodily awareness. So the majority of this talk will be recapping what's happened in my master's enrollment, and then leading on the questions that it kind of provokes for a potential PhD candidature. So what do we mean by bodily awareness in this context? Well, I'm talking about three specific bodily sensations: proprioceptive, kinesthetic, and interoceptive. Now, proprioceptive is the awareness of the position of your hand relative to your body, so maybe knowing exactly where your hand is behind your back. Kinesthetic is being aware of the movement of those hands or legs. So a good way to imagine it is, what's the smallest movement you can do, detectable movement you can do. And interoceptive is being aware of your internal organs, so how your digestive system, feeling your lungs or your heartbeat. And all these affect emotion, cognition, perception, and the social experience. And this is evident in mind-body practices the world over, so from like Tai Chi and yoga in the East to Feldenkrais and Rolfing in the West. Cultures all around the world have realized the importance of being aware of your body and these sensations, as they are kind of beneficial. They're kind of the cornerstone of physical and mental well-being. And what kind of the kind of human-drone interactions we're talking about here are the ones where you have an autonomous drone in the same space as a human being. And academic interest in this area has been growing in the past 5 years, but a lot of it's been focused on things like communication, navigation, flying user interfaces, very instrumental applications as opposed to experiential. So what we've done is we've taken drones and put them together with another system called motion capture. So if you see these little dots here, they are reflective spheres. And what they do is they reflect back infrared light that comes from a special motion capture camera. And all the motion capture camera sees is these 4 dots. And by measuring the size of these dots and its distance between them, it can work out exactly where your hand or your foot or a drone is in space, and you can feed that data into a computer. And then with that, you can do some really cool human-drone interactions with it. This is the result. We've got a body being able to control a drone really accurately in a given space. And that has a couple of implications for bodily awareness. The first one is that you're sharing your space with a drone. So if a drone moves towards you, you have to move your body out of the way if it's moving towards your hand or your chest. So in a way, the drone has an ability to control you really accurately. And the second implication is one of attention. So we are instinctively drawn to moving objects in our peripheral, and the fact that you have this control over the drone with your body means that your attention is held in this kind of control loop, moving it left and right and up and down. So you're really kind of locked in a way, to this experience where you're aware of your body and you're aware of the drone's body. And the last part of the title I want to explain is understanding the design. And we'll be doing that using a process called research through design, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. And so it's basically active process of coming up with ideas, critiquing those ideas, and design researchers will keep reframing the problem until we make the right thing. And that right thing, in this case, is a human-drone interaction that makes you aware of your body, for bodily awareness. So we do this by making prototypes. The latest prototype I've made was displayed at CHI in Glasgow. That's computer-human interaction. It's this massive conference with like 4,000 people. It was completely overwhelming. And it was this 4-day extravaganza where we showcase this prototype, which I'll walk through. I'll walk it through now. So at the beginning of our prototype, our demonstration, a flower is taken from a vine, and this flower it glows bright in your hand as you hold it and place it on the floor. Then it starts to hover in front of you, and you bring your hands close to it, and you realize that it starts glowing with your presence again. Then it starts to move in circles, and these circles get bigger and bigger, and your movements start to synchronize as you try to keep the flower glowing. So with patience, the flower turns purple, and it's now under your control, your delicate control. You can move it up and down, you can move it wherever you like. The metaphor we use is holding a ball so that people can move around, and that comes from Tai Chi. But if you move too quickly, it floats away from you and kind of it's not really interested. So we had about 50 people through, and we'll talk about the results later. But for now, I just want to quickly talk about the related theory. That there was a lot of related theory, obviously, but one that I want to highlight today is called the attention regulation framework. And it taps into this mechanism that is often used in these mind-body practices that I talked about at the beginning of the talk, where you just take slow movement, and doing slow movement in itself makes you aware of your body. This process adds a secondary loop that says that technology can play an important role in just letting you know when you're moving slowly and how you're moving slowly to help you get into this loop of awareness. Okay, so this is the demo time. I'm going to hand out the drones that we used at Kai. They're not going to be on, but we'll all just take one per group. So I'll just grab one out of the thing. Yeah. So don't worry too much about breaking them. They're pretty tough. Got one for you guys. Oh yeah, thanks, Floyd. I'll grab them. Is it group? You in a group? There you go. I hope there's enough to go around, but if there's not, and some of them are a bit beaten up, because they've had a hard time at the So I'll just keep one. All right, so for this demo, we need to stand up. And the person who's holding the drone, that person's going to be the technology part of the process, and the other people, they're going to be the people experiencing this technology. So holding up the drone, the technology holds the drone up like this, and everybody else just hold. If you're in a group of 2, then just hold both of your hands, but if you're in a group of 2 or more, just hold one of your hands up to the drone, and take notice of the distance of your hand from that flower. Now the flower is going to move in a really slow, really slow circle. And that can be a circle can be up, a circle can be down, it doesn't matter. But the important thing that it is slow. And you must keep that same distance with your hands. And this is a way that we use to sense those 3 bodily sensations that we were talking about. The position of your hands. Maybe you even feel hungry. You notice that you feel hungry or something. So we'll just do that a couple more times. Make sure it's real slow. And maybe even the person moving the drone can feel some of these things too. Okay, thanks guys. You can sit down now. So, like I said before, this process is existing work, and actually was used to design a mobile application that initiated these meditative movements, and it used a very similar mechanism, or the mechanism, in fact. They had additional recommendations like ambient sounds and a soft, natural aesthetic, which we took into account as well with our design. But the problem is that now we're dealing with these physical objects that move in space and they exist in a 3D plane, 3D space. So this opens up a whole number of new questions about how they should be designed, and I've kind of categorized them into form, narrative, form, interaction, and narrative. And so we haven't analyzed the data from the conference, but we had a lot of people through, 43 in fact, who answered a questionnaire. And pulling out a couple of quotes, I think we're on the right direction to bodily awareness. We've got people saying that they're reflecting on their posture and realizing how quickly they normally move. So this kind of leads to my research questions. How do we design human-drone interactions that facilitate bodily awareness? And that's kind of what the master's section has been concentrating on largely. But I'm interested in this, in going forward to the PhD, is how do we design human-drone interactions that represent a development of bodily awareness? So to explain this term development, I have to reflect on the design process that I undertook to take the drones from this to the flower that you hold in your hands now. So there's a difference in the way that I moved across the 8 months that I've been developing these drones, and I feel like my improved bodily awareness is really tightly intertwined with the way that the drones changed. So not just in their form, but in the way that I coded them to move, so that they moved more smoothly. And I'm wondering if this kind of experience that I had can be worked into a human-drone interaction. And I'm not the first person to think about this. This is Sarah Erickson. She worked with Kia Hook, and they wrote a paper at CHI, and it got an honourable mention. It was called Dancing with Drones. And it was about an engineer, a choreographer, and a musician working together to create this human-drone performance. And they talked about the fact that not only was the choreography, music and drones created, but the choreographer also changed her somatic self to enable a rich dialogue with the drones. So they changed each other in the way, and they changed each other in a way, is what I'm saying here. And this kind of brings me to the motivation of my PhD, is that I've always been quite fascinated with objects that change their shape or their behavior over long periods of time, and our relationships with these objects, because it's obviously a really great chance for reflection. This old work on a series of like shape-changing lamps to reduce loneliness. I think moving into the 3 case studies now, we've kind of so we want to, over the course of these 3 case studies, we want to change the form and the narrative each time to kind of create this design space. But the difference with case study 2 and 3, I'm hoping, is this idea of like a dynamic interaction where instead of me designing the drones, like changing each kind of Python script to make it more and more evolving, I guess, that it changes by itself. And it leads people along different paths, and they kind of learn with it. And then potentially looking at a dynamic form, so that change is also represented in the drone itself. It's changing its shape itself. And I'm kind of interested in representing that as, say, the narrative that I was interested in using is, say, an animal that you train or you kind of hang out with, and it's like a companion, and its behavior can change as you develop. Or in the dynamic form, it's more like a plant that you tend to. So if we go back to the actual flowers here, if you're performing the movements often, perhaps the flower will bloom, and if you're not performing them often, they would wither, or something else linked to this narrative. So the contribution, obviously, like the 3 case studies can be inspiration for industrial designers and interaction designers. But I'm thinking that the combinations of these findings into a framework would be able to guide design researchers in filling this design space with more work and potentially finding specific applications. So things that have been suggested to me in the past, specifically at CHI, has been physio, aging well, pain management, and potentially design researchers can draw from this work and pick parts out of it to make a specific application like this. Other things include meditation or performing arts, And the more kind of fringe ideas, I guess, would be livable cities, having a drone park that you could visit and interact with these drones for your well-being. Or even functional human-drone interactions, which was what the initial framework kind of proposed, because they wanted to see phone interactions with your phone being less mindless and efficient, and maybe more deliberate. So looking at this timeline, we have we're going to run case study 1. So the demonstration that we had at CHI, we're going to run that over 3 weeks, starting next week, with a little bit more intensive questioning afterwards. There'll be hopefully a paper out of the pilot study that we ran at CHI. And then looking forward, we've got these kind of cycles that kind of happen at the lab, where you look at the possibility of the tech and you do this literature review around it, and then implement it in a case study. So that kind of cycles through twice, leaving about 8 months at the end to write up. Thanks very much.